Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Paris. Welcome to this session about Innovo vaccination. I really appreciate that you spend some time with me here during the lunchtime, enjoying your lunch boxes and this beautiful city. So my presentation will be a brief introduction about the Innovo vaccination on the modern way. That's why we call ideal Innovo vaccination. You know Innovo vaccination, many of you know that is a technology which is in the market for almost 40 years, starting in the US many years ago, and is proven to be a successful way of doing vaccination. Nevertheless, we need to consider that 40 years is a lot of time, and there have been a lot of different modifications in the process and in the technologies that are allowing us to go for a premium level of vaccination. And my objective today is that you can see during this presentation what are the main elements to consider that the Innovo vaccination process is ideal and is granting the hatchery managers to get all the benefits of this process. So let me start. There are three principles for ideal vaccination process that we will display in this slide. The first one, obviously, is the vaccination efficacy. We're talking about a vaccination process. Innovo vaccination only works if we are sure that we are delivering the right dose of vaccine in the right compartment in the egg, and this is generating the right immune response on the animal. Without this, obviously, Innovo vaccination will be a failure. And you will see during the presentation that it's not that easy. Vaccinating one single egg, it's something simple you can do. Vaccinating 80,000 eggs per hour with a good accuracy and a good level of delivering the dose in the right place is not that easy, because the speed in the hatchery, in the industrial environment, is always the limiting factor. 80,000 eggs per hour is too fast to be stopping in every single condition of every single embryo. So that's why we need to focus on how we can develop a technology which is helping us to ensure that the right dose of vaccine is delivered in the right place of every single animal in a such challenging speed of process. So vaccination efficacy is the first pillar. And the second pillar is what we call biosafety, process biosafety. We are working with living animals. Actually, we are working with embryos, and these embryos are really susceptible for contamination and all different elements that can create a problem on the process. We are delivering vaccine at 19 days, 19 days of incubation. So we are still not having what we can say a finished animal. It's still an embryonic development. Any option that the bacteria contamination comes into the process will generate, for sure, a massive problem later on in terms of hatchability, in terms of chick quality, and potential first wean mortality of the flocks. So the same, we need to see what are the new technologies helping us to master all this process in a way that all this biological challenge is really keep under control. And the last point, and which is a very big change from what was the Innovo vaccination many years ago, is the eruption of the data science in the industry, in the poultry industry. Today we are able to connect equipments on real time and to monitor all the different parameters of the process of the Innovo vaccination, of the number of clear eggs, number of unfertile eggs, number of laid eggs that you have, to monitor the speed, to monitor the timings, and helping this information on real time to hatchery managers to take decisions. So this dimension, which was not at all obviously present in the early vaccination process 30 years ago, is now becoming more and more important, and then is leading the transformation of the whole process. So keeping these three pillars together, I will go through this journey in the presentation so you can understand how the new ideal vaccination process is possible. So let's start with the first one. Vaccination works if we are able to deliver a particular dose of a particular vaccine in the right place of the compartment of the egg. Inside the egg, you can see in the picture on the right, you have several compartments. Obviously, you have the embryo itself. Surrounding the embryo, you have what we call the amniotic fluid. Amniotic fluid is very, very important for in vivo vaccination because this fluid will be swallowed by the embryo around day 19 of incubation. And because it's swallowed, it's a good target for in vivo vaccination delivery. You deliver the dose on the amniotic fluid, and the embryo will swallow this amniotic fluid in the day 19, so you are going directly putting your vaccine in the digestive tract. For certain type of vaccines, this is exactly your target. Your main target is to go to the digestive tract. Other type of vaccines, more traditional like Marek vaccination or vector vaccination with Marek as a vector, you can also deliver the vaccine subcutaneous, and you have a good immune response and you have a good vaccine take even if you go subcutaneous. The problem, as you can imagine in the picture, is if you deliver the vaccine in another different compartment. If you deliver the vaccine in the air chamber, there will be no protection. If you deliver the vaccine in the allantoic fluid, which is a second layer of fluid you have right below the air chamber, you will not have enough protection. You will have a little bit of immune response, but very little. And most critically, if you go too deep into the injection, then you go and deliver a vaccine, what we call intraembryonic delivery, which is sometimes very, very critical. You can deliver on the guts, you can deliver on the yolk, in the lungs, and this is most of the time killing the animal. So you need to control all these elements. So what writing in the slide, it is a simple process. Again, it's very simple. If you do it one by one in the laboratory, with a technique, you are 100% sure you deliver where you want to deliver. The problematic is when you go to go 80,000 eggs per hour. That's a different thing. And when you have a lot of differences in the eggs, because remember that we need to go to the industry, we need to go to the real life. And in real life, you have a flock, which maybe is 40, 50 weeks, but you also have flocks of 25 weeks, and you have flocks of 60 weeks. And all this is generating a variation on the egg size, on the embryo development level, on the size of the embryo inside. Eggshell quality is generating a big, let's say, complexity. So it's simple. For one egg, it is simple. For many eggs, many positions, it's not that simple. So what we know from the traditional systems, how they overcome the vaccination, they work in a concept that we call fixed depth. In order to guarantee that all the eggs were injected, they work with a fixed depth of 1 inch, 2.5 centimeters. So this way they make sure that all the eggs have at least a vaccine dose 2.5 centimeters inside the egg. We will see in the coming slide. But this system only works well, let's say, if you are in a, let's say, perfect environment, and it means a nice egg of a nice size with a nice embryo of 18.5 days of development inside, then you are safe. You can do this, sorry. You can do this 2.5 centimeters perforation, and normally you don't create any problem. However, this system is proven to give a little bit of complexity when you are in a small eggs coming from early flocks. If you have 20, 25 weeks, 30 weeks, normally, you know, these flocks are providing you very small eggs, and 1 inch in a very small egg is, relatively speaking, is very deep compared with a normal egg. The same when you do an old flock. When you know old flocks, normally eggshell quality becomes a bit weaker. So when you do this perforation of a thin and fragile eggshell, normally you break it. So this is why what we can say is that traditional in vivo systems work very well in a perfect scenario. But when you are out of the perfect scenario, then you start to have problems. And traditionally, hatchery managers has been looking for alternatives. Some of the hatchery managers are not directly not injecting small eggs, are directly not injecting eggs over a particular age of production because it's generating a lot of problems on embryo mortality. What we can use today is a different technology, which is dual pressure. We call it dual pressure injection system. And in fact, instead of working on a fixed depth injection, we are working in an adaptation to every single case, one by one. The needle is able to go inside the egg, identify the position of the embryo, and then deliver the dose exactly where we want to go, not going even deeper, not going not deep enough. This technology, which is patent and is available in the market, is helping you to overcome this complexity of adaptation to different flux, different situation, different type of eggs. The dual pressure injection, if you compare the graphic on the left and the right, as you can see, for small eggs and big eggs, we can adapt to every single embryo, while in the fixed depth, as you go same depth in every single case, you will have problems on small egg with mortality, and you will have problems with big eggs because of the egg breakage. So this is one of the, let's say, new concepts compared with the traditional fixed depth projects. I will show you very quickly a video because it's much more efficient than myself explaining the case. But here we can see, we try to make a reproduction on the process. You see, on the hatchery you normally have large eggs, small eggs. You have eggs well positioned, a little bit turned, a little bit like this, depending on the incubation parameters, depending on the storage parameters, you can have a lot of variability. With the dual pressure, you see that we have the first pressure to go inside the egg, and then we change to a very low pressure system, identifying where the embryo is located, and we are delivering the vaccine exactly where we want to go, which is the amniotic fluid, or alternatively a bit subcutaneous, not deeper, not intraembryo, not in the lungs, in the gut, and not obviously on the air chamber. When you see in the video, when the vaccine is delivered on the amniotic fluid, it's going later on to the digestive tract, so super protection in case of vaccines like Gumboro. Transmune, for instance, is working on this principle. If you are working with small eggs, the same, you don't go super deep. Here you can see when you are working with a fixed depth and you have all embryos of very small eggs, then you probably are going too deep into the embryo and generating a loss of hatchability. And I'm trying to summarize this on this slide. Adapting to as a summary, adapting to the embryo itself and to the different variability of the eggs you will find in your hatchery is a must if you want to really maximize in ovo compared with the traditional systems. Now the second pillar, remember we talked about this process biosafety. And I would like to show you a couple of slides to introduce you this concept. This is a normal egg, a good egg for injection. But at the transfer time, you know that not all the eggs are containing what we call a live embryo. In a normal production, you will have this scenario. Yes, you will have a majority of your eggs will be embryos alive, but you will have some of unfertile eggs, you will have some early mortality, middle mortality, late mortality, and you will have this type of rotten, explosive contamination eggs. All of them in the traditional system are reaching the Innovo platform. They are reaching in the same tray at the same time they are reaching the Innovo vaccination. And all of them normally are perforated and injected in the traditional models of injection. And it's easy to see that doing vaccination, perforation of this type of eggs on the left, on the right on the screen, will generate problems because contamination gets crossed around eggs and then you have mortality. And we also know that it's very natural, but the older the flock gets, the more number of contaminated eggs you have. These are data showing the evolution of rotten eggs, mold, and contaminated embryos across the life of a flock from 24 weeks to 58. And you see by the last third of life of this flock, you will have a large amount of contaminated and rotten eggs in your flocks. Imagine that you process these flocks and you vaccinate them, including the raw eggs. Basically, you spread the contamination around very quickly. And we know as well that the impact of this contamination is a loss of hatchability. It's a direct correlation. The more contamination you have, more impact you have in hatchability. And it can be very little, like 0.1, 0.2 impact, but it can be 2%. And in a particular flock, which is very bad quality, coming from a farm, they are not doing the job very well, and they are very dirty, so on, then you have a peak of 5% hatchability loss. And then you are bringing contamination, and then you have a pseudomonas contamination in your hatchery with a little bit of aspergillus as well. And this is stays in your hatchery for 1 week and 2 and 3 and a month, because you are not able to eradicate this with the disinfection. So it's not just that you are affecting to the hatchability of this single flock, it's that you are affecting to the full process of your hatchery, and this is critical. Not only about the hatchability. Hatchability is a direct loss on the hatchery performance. Also affecting to the chick quality. You see, we are checking here as well the age of the breeders, and we are measuring the chick quality with the PASGAR score for a year, and then you see that the chick quality level is getting lower and lower with the age of the flock. So the more contamination you have, obviously, your chicks, even they are hatching and they are, let's say, sellable chicks, they are low quality. They will perform worse. They will have a higher first week mortality. This situation is really, really complex. That's why, with the new technology, we are tackling this. On the Innovo process, the ideal Innovo process is a process which is really tackling this and considering that not all the eggs in the tray should be injected, and that we need to bring down the contamination challenge as much as possible. So the way to fight against this is what we call targeting a clean hatch. And a clean hatch is a very simple concept. Well, you know about this. It's bangles, explosive eggs. The eggs containing these pseudomonas of the bacteria, these are the ones generating a massive problem. Comparing hatchery 1 and hatchery 2, hatchery 1 we were doing candling, meaning that we remove all these eggs before Innovo vaccination. You see, late mortality is a little bit under control, depending on the age of the flock, and then the number of cull chicks and the number of rotten eggs is something what we can consider as a normal scenario. If you don't do this candling and you process all the eggs together with the Innovo vaccination of all the eggs at the same time, then the results, which is on the hatchery B, no candling, are self-explanatory. So your levels of contamination and late mortality and rotten eggs are going very high. And again, many of you know that in a hatchery industry, we're talking about very little margins, and 0.1, 0.2 difference of hatchability is massive. 0.5 is totally a crazy difference. Okay, so what you can see here is the difference between removing or not removing those eggs. Why we want to go for a clean hatch? This is a difference between, this is not hatch, this is a transfer time. When you have eggs like this, clean eggs, you already remove the dirty eggs, you already remove the explosive rotten, and on the right side, sorry, here on your left side, you see all this contaminated. And it's very simple. Everybody in a hatchery, everybody has been in a hatchery once can identify that when you have a rotten egg like this, explosive egg like this, it's not only the egg, it's all this egg and all the eggs around get contaminated. And obviously, always, it happens the same. You have explosive, all the trays below are becoming contaminated. And if you measure this in your hatchery, you can see a drop in hatchability on these trays of 5, 8, 10%. One tray, but then you accumulate this contamination for the rest. And this is the difference between what we call a clean hatch, good egg, good quality eggs, versus a dirty hatch. And you can tell me, yes, but the picture is too aggressive. You choose a picture which is, too much. But this is the reality. And this is how it goes. You have this kind of contamination, explosive eggs, and then you have a lot of cull chicks which are hatching and then are peeping and taking a piece of this contaminated material, and then they are dead in the first week or earlier. So that's why it's so critical to go for this clean hatch environment. How can we do this? How can we guarantee that the eggs, which are not the right target, are not even touched? I'm not saying that are not vaccinated, We take for granted that in the 21st century, we need to have technology which is not vaccinating these eggs. But also, we need to go one step further, because even if you don't vaccinate the egg, just a simple touch with the injector can make it explode and generate the massive contamination. So what are the technology we can implement to go through this process without even interacting with these eggs? And that's what we call laser-like technology, and this handling technology, helping you exactly to identify which of your eggs are containing a live embryo and which of your eggs are not even containing a live embryo. Not even saying contaminated. They can be not contaminated, but a low mortality. So with this technology, you can identify the two different types of good eggs to be vaccinated, eggs not to be manipulated. Let's make it simple like that. Okay, and I will show you again a very brief video of the technology to show how it works. Here's what we said before. We don't want to vaccinate all the eggs because not all of the eggs have a live embryo. And depending on your flock, depending on your incubation settings and the storage time, etc., you have certain level of incidence of this unfertile, early mortality, late mortality, etc. So we want to do only vaccination on manipulation on the eggs on the blue embryo life. And how we can do that? The technology today is helping us to identify them, because these type of embryos at day 18, day 19 of incubation are already exothermic. Exothermic means that they are generating heat. Incubation companies know very well, because one of the problems they have is to bring down the heat production at the incubation in the last phase. We take advantage of this reality, and then we monitor which of the eggs are generating this type of heat emission, and then we can monitor which are really having a live embryo and which are not. So the traditional system we see on the right, okay? Sorry. Traditional systems of candling, even the manual candling that many hatcheries in the world are doing with people, operators doing the job, are only able to remove this very, very early stage, let's say unfertile and early mortality. But they are missing the rest. They are missing the late mortality, and they are missing the rotten eggs. That remains on the tray. And we know that they are the most problematic eggs of all. The new technologies are helping us to identify all different elements. And then we are really, really in a good position to say, okay, injector number 1, you can inject this egg, but you don't inject in the second round, and you inject in the third and the fourth, but you don't inject in the number 6. We can do this mapping and this correlation with the technology, which is exactly the difference between a clean hatch and a dirty hatch. We see here what could be the impact. This is a comparison run in 2017. It's a simple comparison, but we can see the difference between this technology and a manual candling, traditional candling, on the different indicators. Number of rotten eggs and number of contaminated embryos at hatch reduce significantly when you are using this technology in all different ages of the breeders: early young flock, middle flock, and late flock. In another trial, using 3 different hatcheries of the same company, we proved the same with an average improvement on hatchability of 0.77. Just because you are removing these eggs and because you are allowing a clean hatch, this company improved by 0.77 the hatchability, which is massive. I can tell you that this 7.7 is massive for a hatchery. So we agree this type of clean hatch is improving hatchability and chick quality. When we go one step further and we check also the late mortality, and we check the cull chicks, here we see as well a reduction, significant reduction of the number of embryos that are dying after hatch because of all the contamination in the environment, and also the cull chicks. Cull chicks are chicks that need to be removed and are not able to be delivered to the farm. So we also see a diminution here. And when another trial we did in Asia in 2019 with 1.2 million, and it's important the number, 1.2 million eggs, we go through this process. And at the end of the day, we see 0.6 more sellable chicks. So we were able to deliver to the market 0.6 more eggs. 0.6 more eggs of 1.2 million is a lot. And this hatchery make an economical analysis, and at the end of the day, it turns out that this improvement represents for this hatchery 126,000 euros. So in the industry, it's important to have these economical parameters monitored. And we see that it's really doing the job and is really doing the promises doing and paying back. So, summary, we remove all these contaminated eggs at the transfer. We don't manipulate them, we don't vaccinate them, and then we get less contamination during the Innovo process, and we get less contamination at the hatchers, the clean hatch. Altogether, we improve the hatchability, we improve the chick quality, and very important as well, is a very important help for antibiotic-free production. In many countries, antibiotic-free production is already happening and is very consolidated. Other countries is starting now. Antibiotic-free production can never happen if you have your chicks challenged by pseudomonas and a lot of bacteria in the hatcher. They will have a big challenge of bacteria, you can never do it. Nevertheless, with this technology, you don't have these chicks challenged with this bacteria, and antibiotic-free at the hatchery is an option, is a real option. Okay, so let's connect the dots. You have a system that is able to adapt embryo by embryo and not doing, this average injection with fixed depth. You have a system as well which is able to choose what eggs needs to be vaccinated and determine with eggs they don't need to be even manipulated. So 1 + 1, and then we have what we call the ideal Innovo. Why? This is how it looks at normal equipment. If you have the first part of the equipment, which is what we call the candling unit, with this technology of live detection, then you have the second module, which is the Innovo vaccination on only the eggs you want to inject. Then you have the third module, what we call is a selective transfer. And let me emphasize on the word selective. We will see later on why selective technology is a must for modern Innovo vaccination. You have the fourth module, which is removing the clear eggs. In many hatcheries, many industries, clear eggs has a commercial value. You remove those clear eggs and you can commercialize them for pet food industry, for cosmetics, there are many subproducts that you can use. And at the end, you have the tipper, which is when you discard all the elements that are not valuable at all. So I mentioned before, the key word here is selective. Only by being able to do this selective injection and this selective transference of the right eggs, we can ensure, on the other side, that the wrong eggs are not manipulated at all during the process. Because traditionally, on the Innovo process, the operators were told to, okay, if you see a rotten egg, or if you have a contaminated egg, you need to stop the process, you need to go and manually remove it, and then clean it, and then you can go through the process Innovo. Like this, it has been done like this for many years. The problem is that if you want to reach these 50, 60, 7,000 eggs per hour, there's no way that you stop the process every time you have a rotten egg. So what is the reality is that the operators are not doing this. And then what you see is a mess and not clean hatch. So the capability to do this automatically is what is making a big, big difference between the traditional process and the ideal process. And again, I'm going to show you another video here, which is explaining very well how it's done. Here we will have the module to do the live embryo detection. The live embryo, using the panel, will identify which eggs are alive and which eggs are not. You have these yellow eggs, it means unfertile egg, clear egg. But you have the green egg, which means contaminated. Here on the close look you see, normally you have injection on the good eggs, but you see, on the bad eggs, you don't even go. You don't even manipulate and touch those eggs, so they don't explode. On the transfer, we do exactly the same. We collect the good eggs, and the rest of the eggs are going through the bin. Eventually, if you are interested, you can collect these yellow eggs, which are normal clear eggs, for sale, and you can collect them and put it on the market. And the rest are going through the bin. Okay, this is what we call the ideal process. Now, come back to the early start of the presentation. If you don't have this technology to do selective injection, selective transfer, and identification of the embryos, there's no way you handle this. Because all the eggs will come, all the eggs are injected, and transferred, and you have a bunch of eggs, good eggs, bad eggs, explosive, contaminated, all together in the same hatcher. This is what we try to modernize with this ideal in ovo vaccination process concept. Very, very quickly, I talk about this. So first, you have this live embryo detection. Second, you have the selective injection. Even if you have some dirty eggs, you don't even manipulate them. Then you have the selective transfer, exactly the same. Even you have some eggs, you don't transfer them to the hatchers. And then finally, all together, you have less risk of in ovo impact on hatchability, you have better chick quality, and you can help on antibiotic-free production. But remember, I start talking about 3 pillars, and we only covered 2. Now we're gonna cover the number 3. The number 3 is, for me, even more important than the other ones. The number 3 represents really the eruption of data science, data management, data collection and analysis in the industry of hatcheries. And today we can say is real and is happening. And this is helping massively to the hatchery managers to take decisions very quickly because they have real-time data. And they can see when a particular flock is going out of the average and is going too high number of clear eggs and is too high number of dirty. And if you can identify this on real time, then you can take necessary actions, you can stop the process, and then you can do analysis of this historical data and implement different process on different actions in your eggs reception, in the storage, even in the farms. If you see one particular flock is giving you problems in hatchability round after round, so you can go to the farm, review what is the egg management, the disinfection, etc., etc. The industry used to do this in the past, yes, but it was a really, allow me the expression, boring and complex process because it was paperwork, it was Excel files, it was a handwriting from the operator, quality of the data a bit tricky sometimes. And when you talk with hatchery managers, they probably tell you, I don't really have time to check all the data and have this, correlation analysis and go back to the farm. I need one guy to do this. And this is normally, it was not happening. Now we have the option to do it automatically. So you can see here is a difference between clean egg, dirty egg with this type of camera. You don't normally see this, you see normal eggs, but this type of eggs will give you total different results in terms of performance, in terms of rotten, dead egg, calcics, and late embryo mortality. If you don't monitor this, if you don't really see this with your data, if the system is not giving you an alarm, Mr. Hatchery Manager, flock number 3 has crossed the threshold of contamination. Please take an action. If you don't do that, it means automatically, it means that you need to do with the paper. You need to analyze the data with the paper. It's not happening. This way, it's automatic. You can set up and you can say, okay, I want to have an alarm every time I'm going over 5%, I'm fertile. Boom. And the system is giving you the info. Straightforward. And then you can have this data anywhere, anytime, which is important. You don't need to go to your hatchery. Maybe your hatchery is in Illinois, I don't know where, and it's 1 hour drive. And you have 3 other hatcheries somewhere. You can have all the information from all the different hatcheries in your computer, which is for the, bed managers, production managers, really, really convenient. This is the last video I'm gonna show you. You can see here what, in fact, the video was developed for more subcutaneous vaccination, but the concept is exactly the same. That's why I allow myself to put it on the screen. Basically, for this type of system, what you need to have is a system technology to communicate on real time. You need a protocol for security, and then you have a platform, so tools for users to access. Here we see on the subcutaneous vaccination, all these equipments are connected with a remote wireless connection. So every time the operator is using it, Even the sprayer, you can see here, the sprayer and the gel is connected to this device that you put in the office in the hatchery. The device is collecting the information and putting the information back to you on computer, on a phone. Here is real-time information. You can go and check in real time. Again, anytime and anywhere, you can check where is the production, if operator number 1 is performing very badly or very good compared with the rest, if you are well ahead of a schedule or you are on time, etc., etc. Importance is that you can do this also from your phone, as mentioned. And then you have a different access, not on the real-time access, but on the historical data. And then you can analyze the historical data of your flocks and then really take decision. And the system can work a little bit for you if you set it properly. Applicable for egg reception, applicable for sub-Q, for the Innovo and transfer line, as I showed you before. So this is a reality. And we, obviously, from Ceva, we have this capability. Other companies are doing the same. I'm not here just to promote my products. I'm just here to promote the concept of data connection, decision-making process in real time, the concept of going for selective injection and not for a massive injection, the concept of going for live embryo identification and not for a open bar, everything is okay. This is the model. And if we can take all this information and send it back to the hatchery managers in real time, this is the model we want to go. That's what we call it in Ideal Innovo. Then you have the info on the phone, you have the daily production, and you have the average production. And I'm at the end of the presentation, so I will summarize what we call Ideal Innovo vaccination. Today is possible because of these 4 elements. The first one is that today we can do a drastic, massive reduction of the contamination in the process. And because of this, we can facilitate the clean hatch, which is the key concept here. The clean hatch is helping my chicks to be more healthy, is helping me to not use antibiotic, is helping me to have first with mortality levels under control, just because I have a clean hatch. And because of this embryo detection system, today we can do it, compared with the traditional. The second point is this adaptation individually to all the different embryos, different environments, big eggs, small eggs, thin eggshells, embryo located a little bit like this, like that, etc. If we can adapt to this, and today we can do it, we can maximize the Innovo vaccination potential and not lose hatchability as we used to do in the past. And now, the third point is this, remember this concept of a selective transfer, selective injection. We don't manipulate the eggs which are not containing a live embryo. We don't even touch these eggs. It's simple. They are left on the tray, and then we are doing the job only with the eggs we want. This selective dimension, which can be done today with modern automation, is a must for Ideal. And the last point, again, is automatic data collection and analysis, helping you to take decisions, identify trends, identify errors in real time. Altogether, we believe we are in the new era of hatchery automation and Innovo vaccination, helping us to really improve the condition on the hatchery. And that's all for my side. I really want to thank you again to be here with me. I know it's not the best timing for the lunch, but I appreciate that, and if you have any question, I'm here. If you want to write me to my email, I will be delighted to answer. Thank you very much.